You know, there are moments in life that change everything in the span of a single breath. Moments where the people you love most reveal parts of themselves you never knew existed. For me, that moment came over mashed potatoes and green bean casserole on what was supposed to be the warmest night of the year. Let me back up. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 73 years old, and I've lived in the same house in Columbus, Ohio for 46 years. It's a modest two-story with blue shutters that my late husband Tom painted the year before he passed. Every time I look at those shutters, I see his careful brushstrokes and remember how he hummed while he worked. For the last 18 years, I've hosted our annual family dinner on the Saturday before Thanksgiving. It's my tradition, my joy, the one time of year when everyone comes together under one roof. My daughter Rachel drives in from Cincinnati with her husband Paul and their 2 boys. My son David comes from right here in town with his wife Jessica and their daughter Emma. This year felt different from the moment they walked through the door. Jessica arrived wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She'd just made partner at her law firm, and believe me, she made sure everyone knew it. Not directly, of course. Jessica was far too polished for that. But there were little comments dropped like breadcrumbs throughout the evening. "Oh, this wine, it's from a private vineyard in Napa. David and I discovered it on our last trip." Emma's new tutor is wonderful. She specializes in gifted children. The waiting list was 18 months, but we have connections. I smiled and nodded the way I always did, focusing on setting out the dinner rolls I'd baked that morning. My kitchen smelled like butter and rosemary, like home. Rachel caught my eye from across the kitchen island and gave me that look, the one that said, "Here we go again, Mom." Dinner started pleasantly enough. 10-year-old Emma chattered about her school play. My grandsons, Tyler and Mason, 12 and 14, talked over each other about their basketball season. Paul helped me carry dishes to the dining room table that Tom and I bought at an estate sale 30 years ago. Its oak surface was scarred and worn, each mark a memory. We were halfway through the meal when Jessica's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then at David, and something passed between them, some silent conversation I wasn't privy to. "So, Mom," David started, setting down his fork with a deliberate clink. "Jessica and I have been talking, and we wanted to discuss something with the family." My heart did a little skip. At my age, sentences like that rarely lead anywhere good. Jessica dabbed her mouth with her napkin, leaving a perfect lipstick impression on the cloth. "We've been reviewing our finances, planning for Emma's future, thinking about our retirement." She paused, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees, and we realized we need to make some difficult decisions about where our money goes. Rachel's fork stopped mid-air. "What kind of decisions?" Jessica's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Well, we've been covering quite a few family expenses over the years. Little things here and there, birthday gifts, holiday meals, helping out when others couldn't quite manage." Her eyes flicked to me, then away. "We just can't continue that anymore. We have our own priorities now." The silence that followed was deafening. "Are you talking about Mom's birthday lunch last month?" Rachel's voice had an edge I recognized from her teenage years. "Among other things," David said quietly, not meeting anyone's gaze. I felt my chest tighten. Yes, Jessica and David had paid for my birthday lunch at the cafe downtown. I'd offered to split it, but Jessica had insisted, made a big show of grabbing the check. Now apparently it was a loan I didn't know. "I'd taken out," Jessica continued, emboldened by David's support. "And honestly, with the holidays coming up, we need to be clear about expectations. This annual dinner, for instance." She gestured around my dining room, at the table I'd spent all day setting, at the food I'd been preparing since dawn. "We simply can't contribute financially this year. We're not paying for you anymore, Margaret. It's time everyone pulled their own weight." The words hung in the air like smoke. "We're not paying for you anymore." Rachel's face went red. Paul looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Emma's eyes were wide and confused. My grandsons had stopped eating entirely. I felt every one of my 73 years in that moment. Felt the weight of the early morning hours I'd spent kneading bread dough, the ache in my knees from standing at the stove, the careful budgeting I'd done on my fixed Social Security income to make sure I could afford the turkey and all the fixings. Jessica wasn't done. "I mean, let's be realistic. You're living in this big house all alone. The property taxes alone must be eating up your income. Maybe it's time to consider downsizing, moving somewhere more manageable. Then you wouldn't need to rely on us so much." Something inside me crystallized, hardened like sugar into candy. I set down my water glass very carefully. "Excuse me for just a moment," I said, my voice steady. "I need to check on dessert." In the kitchen I stood at the counter, my hands gripping the edge, breathing deeply. Through the doorway I could hear Rachel's raised voice arguing with David, Jessica's cool responses, the children's nervous whispers. Then my eyes fell on it, the manila envelope I'd placed in the kitchen drawer that morning. I'd been planning to bring it out after dessert, to share it as good news, but plans change. I picked up the envelope, composed myself, and walked back to the dining room. I think, I said, cutting through the argument, that we need to clear up some misunderstandings. I placed the envelope on the table and sat down. 10 faces looked at me, some confused, some angry, some worried. Jessica, you're absolutely right about one thing. This house is expensive to maintain. The property taxes are significant. I folded my hands in my lap the way Tom taught me to do when I needed to appear calm. What you don't know is that 3 months ago I sold the mineral rights to the property. David blinked. You what? There's a natural gas company that's been buying mineral rights throughout this neighborhood. They made me a very generous offer. I pushed the envelope toward the center of the table. That's the paperwork. The sale closed last week. Jessica's perfectly made-up face had gone pale. The amount, I continued, was substantial, enough that I've already paid off the house entirely, enough that I've set up education funds for all 4 of my grandchildren, equal amounts managed by a financial advisor, and enough that I'm planning to do some traveling I've always dreamed about. Rome, maybe. Ireland. Tom always wanted to see Ireland. Rachel's mouth fell open. Paul started to smile. So you see, Jessica, I'm not sure what expenses you think you've been covering for me, but I assure you, I've been managing just fine. My voice was still calm, but I let some steel show through. This dinner? I paid for every bit of it, just like I have for the past 18 years, with my own money, from my own budget, because I wanted to bring my family together. I stood up, suddenly feeling 20 years younger. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a pumpkin cheesecake and an apple pie in the kitchen that I made from scratch. Anyone who would like dessert is welcome to stay. Anyone who would rather leave is free to do so. But before anyone makes that choice, I want to make something very clear. I looked directly at Jessica, then at my son. This family doesn't run on transactions, it runs on love. And love isn't something you can budget for or write off at the end of the year. It's not an investment portfolio or a line item on a spreadsheet. Emma, bless her heart, spoke up in a small voice. Grandma, can I stay for pie? Of course, sweetheart. Jessica stood abruptly, grabbing her designer purse. David, we're leaving. But David didn't move. He sat there looking at his mother, really looking at me, for what felt like the first time in years. His eyes were shiny. No, he said quietly. No, I think I'd like some pie. Jessica's face went through about 6 different expressions in 3 seconds. Then she turned and walked out. We heard the front door slam, the car start, tires on gravel. The silence that followed was different this time. Cleaner somehow, like air after a storm. Rachel came around the table and hugged me so hard I almost couldn't breathe. Mom, I had no idea. No one did, honey. That was the point. We had dessert. We talked. David apologized, really apologized, with tears and everything. The boys wanted to know if Grandma was rich now. I'm comfortable, I told them, which is its own kind of wealth. Emma fell asleep on the couch with her head on my lap. It was past midnight when everyone finally left. David promised to talk to Jessica, to figure things out. I told him I loved him, that I always would, but that some conversations were long overdue. Now I'm sitting here in my quiet house, Tom's blue shutters barely visible in the darkness outside, thinking about Ireland and family dinners and the strange ways life surprises us. Oh, and about the phone call I got this evening, just as I was writing this down. It was Jessica's mother, Linda. She wants to meet for coffee next week. Says she has something important to tell me about Jessica's childhood, something that might explain everything. I guess some stories have chapters we haven't read yet. But that, my friends, is a tale for another time.